Totally Football Show. Wednesday's action in the Champions League with big wins for Atletico and Paris Saint-Germain. Not the first time that Liverpool have got into trouble playing 5 at the back, given that that's Konaté's shirt number. But can they pull off a classic Anfield comeback next week? We'll talk about that. Atletico's historic sort of win at the Camp Nou. Barca classy, but losing Kubasi. And talking Premier League with Chelsea, Man City and Spurs. They struggle with the Derby, but now can they win with De Zerbi? All that and more in this Totally Football Show. Thursday, 9th of April. And today on the Totally Football Show, we got Charlie Eccleshare. Charlie, kind of football and tennis.
Very much
beat
so.
For the Athletic. Mark Carey is on the tactics tip for the Athletic. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, data and tactics. I'll do both.
Data and tactics. And Dan Kilpatrick's with us as well. He's very much on the hating on Spurs managers
That
department.
is my niche, yeah.
Yeah. How are you feeling about the new fella, Dan?
Mixed feelings, James.
Really?
Fair to say, yeah.
What? What are what's the blend we're looking at?
I think it is a shot in the dark. I sort of think at this point, I would be unsurprised if Spurs took 1 point from the last 7 league games. Equally, you'll be unsurprised if they win, 5 or 7 and shoot up the table and are very comfortable. I just think all bets are off now.
That's pretty exciting, no?
Yeah, kind of. I think the type of football he plays is the type of football I want to see Spurs play. But the big question is he going to be able to do that in... Well, yes, that is a big question. Or is he going to be able to do that in 7 games? Or is he going to have to compromise on De Zerbi ball? Which I think will be hard in itself.
First game is away at Sunderland. We'll get on to all that later on because the Premier League has bothered to show up this weekend, which is nice. For that, we'll touch on Wednesday's games in the Champions League. Paris Saint-Germain beating Liverpool 2-0 at the Parc des Princes on Wednesday. And same scoreline for Atletico Madrid as they got their first win at the Camp Nou in 20 years. Although that's very much specific to the Camp Nou because a little tweak to that stat, Mark.
For the period that they were at Montjuic, while the Camp Nou was being renovated, they did get a victory. So it's a technicality. I don't know whether you want to hold that record or not.
Do you know what I mean? That really shatters that record for me. Anyway, 2-0 win. A victory heavily conditioned by Kubasi's red card for the Catalans shortly before half-time. Mark, you watched that game. And Dan and Charlie, you were following PSG Liverpool. Sounds, Mark, as though you maybe had the more...
Can I be fully transparent with the group? We're in safe company here. I watched the Liverpool PSG game.
Did you?
And I watched the Barcelona
because you can.
Game this morning.
Right.
Because when you're doing data and tactics, you get a feel for, and many people probably can do this, you can watch it on 2 speed and be able to still get the patterns and the feel of what's going on. There's a lot of
it's really operating on a higher plane than the rest of us.
It's like a lot of people will be listening to this on double speed.
Exactly, yeah. You kind of have to tap into it a little bit. There's a lot of...
we speak really slowly?
There's a lot of... fluff in the average football game where it pans.
The average football podcast.
Well, also true. I mean, it pans to the managers, the substitutions, etc. That you can actually get a real good feel for the game. And
you're a busy guy, and 45 minutes is a lot more doable than 90.
Well, I'm just committed to my work, and I wanted to make sure if we can do this podcast, I've watched both.
But games. PSG Liverpool, you saw that in real time.
Yes, I did.
We're being shown up here slightly, Charlie.
No, I committed to producer Charlie that I would watch the Barca. Game.
I
just didn't say that I had to watch it live.
6-minute highlights of Barca Atleti on the train to the office. So.
At normal speed, though, Dan.
Yeah, at normal speed, precisely. So I think I've got a very good feel for it.
I watched it on half speed so I could really pick up on the nuances of those highlights.
Are there teams that you will invariably watch at double speed because they're just so...
No, it's pretty uniform, I think. I think when you have a team who really are quite coordinated and coherent in and out of possession, I genuinely believe that you start to find the patterns far quicker. Because if anything it's like if, I'm trying to think, if, you used to play, what's the game where someone turns around very quickly and you have to...
Grandmother's Footsteps.
Yes, okay. Or,
go on.
What was the alternative? Is that something about a wolf?
What's the time,
What's
Mr.
the time,
Wolf?
Mr. Wolf? It's that sort of thing where if you
finally
if
a
speed on that.
Sorry. If you go really slowly, it feels like then you can't see the difference. But if you were to turn around,
you appreciate the movement because it's accentuated by the double speed.
Yeah, maybe that analogy didn't hold exactly as I wanted it to, but I do think that you can start to really see the coherence of the patterns in the movement when it is 2 or maybe even 3 speed at times.
Right.
Whereas at typical speed and watching everything for the first time, you're not entirely sure what's going to happen, and you can't quite get those patterns.
A more extreme example would be those graphs that were terribly fashionable maybe 5 years ago. Those bar charts which would animate and show you the levels of goals scored by Messi or Ronaldo, or levels of richness of Premier League clubs that were kind of more. And because they were running at kind of a minute per year or something, it was very evident the trends.
And the context
on a macro level.
How people met their partners. Over the years, online is sort of a zero in the 70s, and then it shoots up, and church kind of shoots down, and they start kind of moving up and down.
Really? What were the other categories, Dan?
It's kind of like through family, work,
right?
Church, out and about, and online kind of shoots up to 70% or something nowadays, having started at nil.
Crikey. All right, we'll keep an eye on that. We're going to start, though, with the events at the Parc des Princes. Paris Saint-Germain 2-0 winners against Liverpool on Wednesday night. And Arne Slot saying afterwards he was happy it was just 2. Understandable. We all watched this. How impressed was everybody with the reigning European champions?
Pretty impressed with every... I mean, apart from the finishing, they were really, really good. They absolutely battered Liverpool. I mean, it was...
Although there was a period before they got their second, Paris Saint-Germain, when it did look, I thought, like Liverpool were going to... The first Paris Saint-Germain goal was... There was an element of luck involved. And although Liverpool famously didn't create any real shots themselves...
Had no shots on target, 3 shots total.
Which, I'm no tactics guru, but... yes. But yeah, okay, back to you.
I thought PSG were...
Battered, would you say, Dan?
Battered. Yeah, I mean, presumably we all watched on TNT Sports.
Yes.
What I thought was interesting, or actually quite annoying, was Fletch and Ali McCoist constantly debating about who would be happy with what throughout the game.
I felt like McCoist was getting quite annoyed with Fletch.
Almost non-stop. Would Arne Slot be happy with this in a second? But actually it ended up being quite prescient, because in the end, I think you could have made a case that I could argue now that Slot would be happy and unhappy, and I could equally argue that Luis Enrique would kind of be happy and unhappy. But I think PSG got the 2-0. But it should have been out of sight.
But exactly. But I think that speaks how dominant PSG were. The fact that they'll be annoyed with 2-0 because they clearly should have won that game 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Including,
precisely.
I don't understand how they didn't get a late penalty. It was absolutely bizarre. It was as if the VAR had already put his jacket on, wallet in the pocket, and was like, I'm sort of done. It's 4:59 on a Friday. Get me out of here. Like it was so weird.
The same thing happened in the Tuesday game as well with Bayern and Real Madrid. Not quite the same case, but the idea that actually because something happens later on in the game that it feels less relevant. You think to your point, let's just go home.
Yeah.
Fans have left. Now. It shouldn't be the case. If that happened in the first 5 minutes, I think it would be completely different.
And it was especially odd because you might say, oh well, maybe it's just a VAR doesn't really want to get involved, but they already had for the overruling that earlier penalty.
Right.
The one where Konate slides in, which probably was the right...
They sent him to the monitor, didn't they? Whereas,
but you have to. You can't just straight overrule that. He has to, for a subjective call, he has to go and look at it.
He can't just say, I accept your decision? He has to go
and
to the
look.
monitor?
Yeah, for a call like that. Yeah. Unless it's an offside, because that's a subjective call. But they sent him over. They didn't even send him over for the second Konate. And I'm sure if they had... They would have given it. But yeah, I mean, PSG really only have themselves to blame for it being 2-0. I mean, Dembele himself could have had a hat-trick.
I've got the stats here. 74% possession. Total shots, 18 for Paris Saint-Germain, for Liverpool, 3. Shots on target, 6 for Paris Saint-Germain, for Liverpool, well, none.
I think that's a battering. Especially bear in mind some of those that weren't on target, like Dembele's from about 6 yards out that he skied.
Yeah. Dembele didn't have the best of evenings. Doué scored what looked like a lovely goal, and I mean, I still feel it was lovely, even though there was an element, as I say, of fortune, the deflection coming off Gravenberch.
Yeah, it got a lot of topspin from Gravenberch's sort of flick, and then it just went over Mamardashvili, who did have a good game. I suppose that's when you say about it being a battering and only being 2-0, you need your goalkeeper to have a good game, as was the case last year when Alisson had probably the game of his life and then kept it to no goals.
Wasn't it?
Yes.
Good night for the Georgians indeed.
So the second goal, which featured an absolutely extraordinary through ball from João Neves, picked up by Kvaratskhelia, who's still got a bit to do. But I wondered if Mamardashvili actually could have been a bit braver with that. Because,
I thought that.
Yeah?
I thought the same. You don't want to dive at the player's feet, though, because then they can easily just go down. But at that point...
You have to commit.
Yeah, and the goal was scored subsequently anyway, so you kind of got nothing to lose.
PSG missed loads of penalties anyway. So take your chance, as a data guy, take your chance. I do wonder if that does come into their considerations, that when you're doing that incredibly quick fire calculus. But... they do have this terrible penalty conversion record in the Champions League.
Yeah,
It's just that
play
penultimate
percentage.
touch he takes, though, is so good. And then he kind of feints, which I think sends Joe Gomez off balance a bit. So actually, the end of that move looks really easy, but actually it's quality.
It's incredible, and it's shown because Mendes tries to do a similar thing right at the end of the game.
And stumbles.
And he stumbles, he miscontrols it. I mean, again, which summarises what PSG are about, that in, what was it, stoppage time, you've got Hakimi squaring it for Mendes. I mean, that's how they play. They're so aggressive, they're so attacking. I mean, they are just an unbelievable team to watch. The way they stretch the pitch and move opposition teams around. And obviously Liverpool changed their system. They went 4-3 at the back.
Yeah, which I think was the right thing to do. Because Ibrahima Konate does go aggressive at the best of times anyway in a centre-back partnership. And then if you leave any gap for PSG, even a half-decent Premier League team, Liverpool have got caught out in the past, whereas it's happened quite a lot when any one of those three would go and jump into midfield and go really quite far at times. They then at least knew that they've got essentially still a back four to be able to deal with it. So I do think ultimately it was the right decision. It's more just the optics of it that it's the current champions of England going to the current champions of France and the current Champions League holders, and basically saying, okay, we are the minnows here. We are not as
I
strong
bet
as we
Thomas
once
Frank
were.
in the North London derbies.
Yeah, or Brendan Rodgers against Real Madrid went back in 2014.
That was a load of changes, wasn't it, that he made?
Yes, it was. But it was a similar mentality. We can't possibly win this. And Slot's comments afterwards kind of echoed that. Everyone, whatever they try, comes to Paris and they get beaten, which is not completely true. So you feel that the back five was the right tactic. Why did they still lose 2-0 then?
I think they were very passive. I think they were attracting a lot of... Well, they allowed PSG to have the ball in the hope that they could go man for man at times and then try and condense those spaces. I think it's one of those where... It's hindsight bias, isn't it? But if they do get it to one, go away, back to Liverpool with a 1-0 loss, you think, okay, it's over two legs, the classic Anfield factor, etc. You could maybe just justify the overall performance, even though, to your point, I think it was more of a battering.
You could also argue, Jimbo, that those two things aren't mutually exclusive, that it was the right thing to do, even if you do lose 2-0, because you play more openly, it might be a worse scoreline, because that's the gulf between the teams at the moment.
Yeah.
So Charlie mentioned Frank there, and there have been some English teams who've played PSG with this kind of special approach, like Chelsea in the Club World Cup final springs to mind, and even Frank Spurs in the Super Cup had this kind of special operation to nullify them. And it felt like Slot had been thinking about his own version of a special operation, right, with a kind of back five.
Right.
We'll try and press them. We'll try and I mean, who knows? It's sort of counterfactual, isn't it? But I don't think it worked very well. Like they could have lost that game, should have lost that game, probably 4-0. But who's to say it wouldn't have been even worse if they'd have opened up.
I do agree with that. I think that the Chelsea game is actually quite a relevant one. I was at the game in the States last summer for Chelsea PSG, and the one thing that they did really well was go man for man when they needed to, make sure that PSG's rotations were kind of being tracked, but they also had a threat in behind, and they were able to actually stretch their legs a little bit and be a bit more counter-attacking, whereas Liverpool, aside from Hugo Ekitike, at the moment, they just don't have the players who can actually run in behind and stretch PSG. And PSG's, all of their defenders, not least their fullbacks, are so fast that even if you try and just have them in a race, they'll get back and recover. So I think Liverpool would being defensive, but then you have to have a bit of a threat going the other way, and they just didn't have that.
Paris Saint-Germain, the speed, the aggression, the pressing, the wastefulness in front of the goal, are they now back to kind of classic last season Paris Saint-Germain?
I'd say they look pretty similar, yeah. But yeah, I guess just on that Liverpool point, it is true that most teams against them, even if they are being overwhelmed by their attacking quality, do still. They are a team that give you chances. We saw that with Villa. We saw that with Arsenal. Obviously Chelsea as well. And Liverpool didn't have anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I think PSG are getting back to that level. I mean, they are helped by things, and this feels so alien to us. Like the Ligue 1 have cooled off their game in between.
What?
In between the legs. Oh, sorry, they've moved it.
Their following game.
No, they've got a game in between the two legs.
Yeah, between that's not going to be happening, or it's going to be postponed to I think the penultimate weekend of the season.
But I mean, things like that. Can you imagine the Premier League, the sort of outcry and all the parochialism? I just can't envisage a situation where that's even considered.
That was a sort of story of last season, right? Like Arsenal beat them in the league phase last season, and then PSG just grew in strength, and
just looked so much stronger,
and because they're not playing really intense matches every single weekend.
Or playing at all. This
or
weekend.
playing at all.
Which, by the way, you know what game that was being moved? It was the game against Lens, which is their title rival. It's not like they were playing a minnow at the bottom of the league. Like they would have had to put a lot of energy, effort. There would have been a whole factor around it because everything would have been built up for it, and that game's been postponed. So
and Lens actually initially declined the invitation. The league said no, we're moving it anyway. So. Yeah, the power of PSG. Colin Miller with a totally unnecessary dig at Spurs, pointing out that in the last 15 months, Paris Saint-Germain have actually won more home games against Premier League teams than Spurs have, who actually play in the Premier League.
I was going to come armed with some Northern Ireland stats to hit back at Colin, but I'm not that petty, so I'll be the bigger man here.
So is it over at 2-0? How happy should Slot be?
That's the question, ask Fletch and Ali McCoist.
They're probably still debating it.
As I said, I think I can make a case both ways, but I think Slot's probably going to be more than anything relieved. As Mark says, there is the famous Anfield factor, and get an early goal. PSG have crumbled in Champions League knockout games before, as we know. Liverpool have come back from worse situations than this, so stranger things have happened. I think
big win against Galatasaray in the home leg. Last time out, they lost 16, although different side, of course.
I mean, PSG won Anfield last season in the second leg. I mean,
they'll score, won't they? I'm just sure they will.
You would think so. The only thing really you could say is that the fact that PSG were so wasteful, does that give Liverpool the belief that maybe this is their tie, kind of thing? In the same way that when you play a team who are absolutely destroying you but only going at half-time 2 or 3-0 up.
So Dembele, who had those sizable misses in this game, was part of that Barcelona team in 2019 who let Liverpool off the hook a little bit in the first leg and then got done in the second to set up the final.
The difference, I think, with that one was that Liverpool lost that first game 3-0, but they played really well. If you actually were to watch that game back, maybe not everyone would like to, maybe on 2-speed, but Liverpool were really disappointed with the scoreline because the performance was actually quite good. And you think, we could beat these sort of things if you're a Liverpool fan. But I think this is different where you're like, no, there is a gulf in quality. Even if we try our hardest, we could maybe get a goal or two, but PSG could easily just go up and the other end and score within the blink of an eye, and then you've got to score 3 minimum. I think it's comparing apples and oranges.
Okay. Can they beat Fulham, Liverpool? That's the more pressing question. Coming up this weekend in the Premier League as Liverpool battle to stay in the top 5, a point currently ahead of Chelsea in what is now confirmed as 5 Champions League places for the Premier League next time around. Alexander Isak, I imagine, might be featuring in the game against Fulham this weekend after making his first appearance since Christmas in Wednesday's game in Paris.
Certainly. You think he might be able to come off the bench at least. I don't know if he'd be ready to start, but that could be a factor. A big difference from the first leg if he could play an hour or so.
Liverpool are now on 17 defeats for the season. Their record since the turn of the century, a lot of people have been chatting about this, is 19, which feels very doable for Slot's side with a bit of ambition. I'm not sure what the record beyond the start of this century is. I'm sure people were keeping records before that. But
is that all competitions then?
Yes.
So if they lose to the second leg, which is possible, probably. Then they're only one to go in the final 7 league games. Feels very likely.
Yeah, the fact that there is a league phase and the fact that Liverpool have gone far in competitions means that it's kind of difficult because once you're out of a competition, you can't then subsequently play in them to lose. But who am I to argue with a stat?
That's very
I think they've lost more league games than they've won since they won the opening 5. I mean, it's been a really sustained period of, you won't even call it form, that's close to a whole season.
Wow. That was Liverpool on Wednesday. Paris Saint-Germain currently in pole position to take a semi-final berth against either Bayern or Real Madrid, but as it stands, probably Bayern, which would be quite a matchup. Next up, let's find out what happened in the All-Liga affair. Barcelona, Atletico Madrid. That's the Julian Alvarez free kick. I imagine you slowed down to see him take that, did you?
I did, to be fair on that one specifically. I did.
And you were rewarded.
And the replays themselves were even just that little bit slower as well. So I was speaking to my colleague Connor O'Neill in the office this morning, and he did say, could the keeper have done better for that free kick? And I think it's pernickety, I would say, because it was a very, very good free kick. Wasn't a postage stamp, but still a very, very good free kick. I think all the credit should go to Julian Alvarez there, but could Jean Cassier have done better.
It is a free kick where it can go either way as well, which I do think makes it a bit harder for a goalkeeper.
Well, interestingly, Rashford from exactly the same position goes the other way, doesn't he? Toward the keeper, and the keeper does get a touch onto the bar.
It was a good free kick from Rashford as well.
It was.
Yeah, but I think that if you can get it up and over the wall like Alvarez did, I think it's a better percentage play than going the side the keeper's on.
Rashford's is also quite straight. He doesn't get it anywhere near the corner, which does help the keeper. But I mean, that's a good example. You must have missed all the VAR faff with,
faff being the right word. Yeah, just get to the action.
Get to the free kick.
Yeah, exactly.
It is an incredible free kick. I mean, he's operating at such a high level, Alvarez.
And Barcelona would like him to be operating at the Camp Nou next season as well, though
A lot of other teams would too.
there does seem to be a certain amount of legs to that Barcelona story, although the kind of stumbling block logically would be the fact that he's got a massive price tag, and Barcelona famously don't have any money, but that just doesn't seem to stop them. Anyway, Atletico Madrid have been fairly emphatic in their insistence that he's going nowhere. His record in the Champions League is absolutely extraordinary. It's his 9th Champions League goal this campaign, which far outstrips his output in the Liga. But 9 Champions League goals, Atletico going deep helps with that. He also put the ball through for Simeone, which led to Kabasi's challenge and the red card.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been on this podcast before. I've been on many different podcasts where we talk about Barcelona's high line, and you just think, when are they going to learn? And it does work very well a lot of the time, but I think maybe you and I have spoken about it, Charlie, where it works until it doesn't. And those instances where you get caught out means that actually then that could cost them the whole tie by just being that little bit too high in their defensive line.
So they have a player sent off, and they immediately go down a goal as well from the resulting free kick. But Flick shows no desire to be happy with that scoreline, to borrow the recurring motif, and it indeed presses Atletico and creates further chances. I think the stats, after they went down to 10 men, they had 60% possession and still an XG of 0.61, which I don't know if that probably quite high. I'm not sure exactly. And a game plan that largely works until it, as you say, it didn't when Sorloth, having just come on, struck. But that's just, I mean, it's not that they don't learn, they know the lesson, but Flick's not interested in it.
True, and if they'd have had 11 men, the fact that it obviously didn't work was because they had the man sent off, and then they got sucker punched with the Sorloth goal, which I should come back to as well, because there's some interesting stats on Sorloth and how he's just a thorn in the side of Barcelona. But I think it's quite fallible with that high line, because it runs from deep. If they have someone that they're marking, they step up, and the centre forward's trying to go in behind, and they really manage to catch the opposition offside quite frequently. But Simeone was making a deeper run, so it was kind of getting in behind, and he had the forward momentum. Right. And if someone else has forward momentum and you try and go the other way, that it has to be so precise, and then if it goes wrong, it goes wrong like it did. But they did, to your point though, they did carry on. They shuffled things a little bit. Eric Garcia went into the back line, and they still kind of kept a bit more of Lewandowski came off at half time as well, and they basically kept Yamal and Rashford really high and wide, and just tried to play things sort of through the central areas, and still looked pretty good for it. Atleti did look, if not totally comfortable, because they were playing against 10 men, they still had that discipline to be able to sort of shuffle along, and then had the sucker punch. And even though it was 2-0, I still back Barcelona in the second leg. I mean, Atleti are really good at home as well, but I can see Barcelona scoring 2 goals with 11 men very easily.
So Barcelona won at the Civitas Metropolitano this last weekend, 2-1. Yeah. Ironically, it was Atleti who had a man sent off in that game.
Yeah.
So, red card's a factor. Charlie?
Well, I just on the was saying before about like that split-second calculation you can make. You know, we're talking about Mamardashvili, but in this instance, you would have thought surely Hansi Flick knows there is a high risk, that there's a decent chance with playing the way they play that players are going to be running through. That's baked in. But surely in that instance, you just do not get yourself sent off, because far better to let him run through. And maybe it's not entirely deliberate. The defender gets a bit sort of tangled, but just let him run through, because if it's 11v11, they stand such a high chance of not losing that game on the night.
Am I right in saying though that Simeone kind of takes the decision out of Kabasi's head anyway?
It's a clever, he goes across his body, doesn't he? And there's not much Kabasi can do.
Yeah, maybe.
It's very satisfying, by the way, when you get a double jeopardy from a free kick like that. Because we're used to it with a penalty, someone's foul in the box, red card, penalty, goal, but it's just kind of rarely seen. I quite like when you get a red card and then someone bangs the free kick in the top corner.
I mean, because they were so on top before then, Barcelona, weren't they? They had a lot of chances, and even as you say, even after the red card.
Yeah, Rashford played well, and didn't score, obviously, either did Jamal, but I think with those two, Lewandowski, I don't know when Rafinha might be back. I know he's injured at the moment, so obviously he was out, but they've definitely got enough to score 1, 2, maybe more goals. I mean, the Newcastle game in the previous round, I mean, how many did they score? Was it 8?
7-2.
7-2, and what was the aggregate score overall? They've got the quality in the team and the squad to score upwards of 5 goals easy. I know that Atleti are a different prospect, but I don't think this ties over at all.
Atleti were very poor in the second leg against Spurs, in different circumstances. They had a lead and they just didn't really show up. So,
should Barcelona have had a penalty in this game for that Pubil handball incident, reminiscent of Emi Martinez and Tyrone Mings?
Yeah, that was against Club Brugge, wasn't it? Not so long ago. Yeah, it was a weird one. It was a curious one, and it was a one where even the referee was like kind of just looking to be like, no, you should be kicking the ball as it is a goal kick, and I shouldn't be having to make a decision now. But that confusion kind of led to a lot of disruption. But then, of course, the point that Hansi Flick was making after the game was that actually VAR is there for that very reason. That confusion is kind of okay with the referee, but someone then needs to intervene. But it was the fact that the goalkeeper passed to Pubil. He picked the ball up, essentially, put it back down again to take the goal kick, and then passed it back to the goalkeeper. And that confusion was, I think he was already on a yellow, which was the point.
Yeah.
So then he should have been sent off, and then it would have been a penalty as well. And that then changes, you'd imagine, the scoreline and the outlook of the game.
There was one of those with Gabriel in the Champions League quarter-final between Arsenal and Bayern Munich as well, a couple of years ago.
Which the referee didn't sanction, and I think was hailed for the fact that he'd used good sense.
Kind of, yeah. He didn't give it, but afterwards Tuchel was pretty annoyed about it.
So Barcelona, you favour them. Even though they haven't kept a clean sheet in the Champions League, you think they can score at least 2 more than Atletico?
I think it's possible. I don't want to nail my colours to the mast too much to say. They will definitely win 3 or 4, 1 even.
Because they do. Actually, them going through the tie at this point.
Yeah. If it were the reverse sort of location and they were bringing it back to Camp Nou, I'd be even more favourable towards Barcelona. But
surely.
I'm not sure. Just to go back to the Sorloth thing as well, the fact that he was the thorn in the side. In 491 minutes, he scored 6 goals against Barcelona. So in such a short space of time where he's played against Barcelona recently, that's better than a goal a game if you average it out. So Barcelona have a lot of reasons to be scared of Sorloth.
Right. Should they start him?
That's the difficulty as well. I mean, with Alvarez as well, and then Griezmann.
Wow.
That's the age-old thing when a substitute comes on as well. But I can see Atleti scoring a goal in the next leg, but I still back Barcelona. Yeah,
we'll see next Tuesday. Charlie, you want to talk about Antoine Griezmann? I want to also mention a little bit more Yamal's performances in these 2 games in the space of 4 days between Barcelona and Atleti. But Antoine Griezmann,
this extraordinary, I don't know if you call it a stat, but that 3 of his 4 children share a birthday. I mean, that's just extraordinary.
That is weird.
Wow.
I speak
and
as
that
someone
birthday was Wednesday.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, busy day for him. I mean, I wonder how the 4th
day,
child.
9 months.
Well,
what would be?
Yes, but it would have been
August of
July. I imagine.
Would it be July?
Yeah. Because I was thinking about that logistically. Yeah, just whether you do it. Are you more prolific in the off season? But I think some of those were major tournament years.
But I'm not sure Griezmann would have featured. Would he? It's been a while since he's been.
Well, one was 2016, so he would have. He was kind of at the very much there. I speak as someone. One of my, I have a child on the way who is due on the same due date as my first.
No way.
So I don't know. So my wife and I have speculated: is there something
in the water?
A certain people at certain times. We both
work with someone in football.
Yes, and I was thinking about that as well.
3 children were all born in the summer, which they were very open about being planned.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want the season to be disrupted.
Exactly.
So maybe Griezmann and his partner were sort of thinking along similar lines.
But then this is a very busy time for a footballer. But April, peak running.
Maybe
do you want your kids?
Maybe the thinking is, that as a dad, there's not that much you can do for the first 6 weeks or so, and then be
more hands-on in June.
You step up in when the season's over. It might have been really carefully thought out.
Good planning from the Griezmanns.
Interesting. Lamine Yamal's performance, Mark, across these 2 legs, any number of amazing clips of him weaving past 6, 7, 8 Atletico players. No end product. That was largely conditioned, I guess, by the fact that Lewandowski had gone off and Atletico was sitting back defending their 1-0 lead.
I think so, yeah. I think especially because, as I said, in that second half, Rashford and he played far wider to try and stretch the pitch because they sort of had to. But in the league game, it's been doing the rounds on social media, hasn't it? That it was a little nutmeg to then. Yeah. Is it a trivella? That's the name of. Oh no, it's not a trivella. It's what's the outside of the foot?
Yeah, that's a trivella.
Yeah. Incredible pass, all in kind of the same move.
Oh, and there's another one later on in that game where he's marked by a couple of players, goes one way, back again, then breezes past another couple of Atletico players. But yesterday, I swear there was one where he went past 8 players, I think, in the box.
Yeah.
How? The close control against elite elite football is absolutely extraordinary.
It was off the cuff as well, you could tell, because he even managed to get in a step over within all of that, because he was just trying to almost move out of the way of the ball to try and still drop a shoulder, and then he was just banging on the floor after, because he almost basically took on the whole team and scored.
Yeah. What's it, Trivella, sorry? Googling.
It's like the Luka Modric passes.
Well, it goes back to charisma.
Sure.
Ricardo Charisma.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I would associate it with
But he was more of a shooter with it, wasn't he? Like he could shoot with it. Whereas I'm thinking like those Modric passes he would play with it. But yes.
I think we had a Trivella on Tuesday. Who did a wonderful pass on? Diamande, and again from a Portuguese provenance, Diamande's remarkable ball, which very nearly put Araujo.
It did.
Well, it did put him through. But nearly set up an opening goal for Sporting against Arsenal. That was a Trivella, in as much as we're qualified to call it that. I don't know. Quaresma, if he's got any sense, will have TM'd that
Quaresma
shit.
should have kind of claimed ownership of that, really.
Quaresma?
Well, he should be called the Quaresma.
Absolutely. Premier League Matchday 32 begins on Friday night with West Ham taking on Wolves. The Hammers, who were actually the first team that Wolves managed to beat this season. That's Friday night. Saturday lunchtime, you've got Arsenal against Bournemouth, which is a Basque reunion for Arteta and Iraola. 2 games at 3 o'clock on Saturday, Brentford-Everton and Burnley-Brighton. At 5:30, Liverpool take on Fulham. Then on Sunday, 4 matches, 3 of them in the early 2 p.m. slot. There's Palace-Newcastle, the King Charles shopping list derby. And there's Sunderland-Spurs. Spurs, by the way, could be in the bottom 3 by the time that kicks off if West Ham will get a point, I guess. What's the goal difference looking like?
Spurs have a marginally better goal difference. I imagine they need to win.
Need a win against Wolves at home on Friday. But yes, could be in the bottom 3 at kickoff at the Stadium of Light. And then Forest Villa, the Centre Parks derby, as we like to call it. 4:30 on Sunday, Chelsea Man City, with a coda on Monday evening of Manchester United taking on Leeds. Leeds, who haven't won a league game at Old Trafford since 1981. Many of those years, of course, they didn't have league games at Old Trafford. Quite a round. What are you most looking forward to seeing, Dan?
I'm duty bound to say Spurs at the Stadium of Light, I think.
All right. First game for De Zerbi in charge of Tottenham. What kind of... I guess the reception's less of a question because they're away from home. So how effective do you think his changes will be after such a brief period in charge?
Well, I think, as I sort of alluded to at the top, the big question is he going to try and play kind of full De Zerbi ball in the last 7 games? Or is he going to be a bit more pragmatic and think, I've got a rescue mission here. I need to do whatever I can just to get this team over the line, win 2 or 3 games in whatever style possible. And I think there's inherent risks in both, really. I have visions of Antonin Kinski. He's going to have to play because Vicario is recovering from hernia surgery. Yeah, he's going to have to play for the first time since that first leg.
And he's going to do the rolling the ball on the studs.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I've got visions of him, with his studs on the ball, kind of baiting the Sunderland press and this sort of sea
Robbie
of red and white shirts sprinting towards him and just... the Spurs back line kind of nervously hiding wherever they can. Or is he going to say, well, look, Spurs have played agricultural football for most of the season under Frank and Tudor, and I'm just going to make some small tweaks and give the players a bit of confidence, put an arm around their shoulder, tell them how good they are, and try and creep over the line and then sort of start again in the summer.
What's your guess? The latter doesn't sound like a De Zerbi.
He suggested that he's going to be a bit more pragmatic.
Oh, really?
So he did an interview, his first press conference this Friday afternoon, where I imagine he'll reveal more, but he did say in his first interview with the club that he would I can't remember the exact wording, but the implication was certainly that he was just going to do what was necessary. But I think that's when you get a manager who is like all about this kind of searing intensity and commitment to his style, it's actually presumably quite difficult to come in and not commit to that and pull your punches a bit.
And I do think we sort of forget, these managers, this was something Ange always said, although obviously he did then compromise for the Europa League, but he plays that way because he thinks that is the best way to get results. And De Zerbi will feel that as well. He's not doing it because he wants to entertain and that kind of thing. Like, he thinks this is how you win football matches. So I don't know how easy that will be for him to really compromise.
He took a point from his first 5 games at Brighton, and they were very entertaining. Or 2 points, I think it was, in fact. And the first game was a 3-3 draw against Liverpool. And, they immediately looked, like a really interesting, exciting team. But I think Lewis Dunk is on record saying they didn't know what was going on in the first couple of months. And then once they got up to speed with it, it was second nature. And, they felt they'd gone up several levels. But this is not Spurs are not in a situation where you can where you have time.
In time for Lincoln away, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Sunderland away, the fixture this weekend. Sunderland, who won their last game in the Premier League, the time-weird derby, but have actually lost their last 3 at the Stadium of Light. In terms of recent form, those Spurs not looking the best. They are winless in their last 13 games in the league. They and Sheffield Wednesday, the only teams anywhere in English League football yet to get a win since the turn of the year. Lovely stat as well that 20% of their points this season came in the first 2 games of the campaign.
Yeah. It's just tragic, isn't it? Spurs are on an historically bad run of form. And yes, they've got a new manager in, and I think the mood has changed and lifted. But if you actually look at the teams around them, Forest, West Ham, Leeds, it's just them, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, West Ham, for example, I know they lost last time out in the league, but I think since they beat Spurs, they're probably averaging 1.5 points a game, something like that. They've been pretty competitive. Forest have just beaten Spurs 3-0 in the league. Leeds are grinding out results. So of those teams, Spurs are by far the likeliest to go down. If you actually look at form and momentum and direction of travel, they've got this new manager, they've got a boost. But, at half-time at the Stadium of Light, if they're 2-0 down, that mood uplift is going to quickly go out the window.
West Ham taking on Wolves Friday evening there. Wolves unbeaten in 3 matches now in the Premier League. Forest, as you mentioned, are Premier League relegation race adjacent at the moment. They're 3 points above West Ham as they prepare to take on Villa. And Leeds, who are 4 points clear, have that game away at Old Trafford. What about Forest Villa then? They're both in quarter-final first leg action tonight as we record in the Europa League. Chris Wood, though, back in the squad. That's exciting news.
Yeah, I think Forest have got a bit more of an attacking threat in recent weeks, actually. I think they've been, at times, they were quite toothless throughout this season. They were sort of calling for Chris Wood or wanting Chris Wood to come back sooner. But I mean, including that 3-0 victory over Spurs, Morgan Gibbs-White has been the creative catalyst for Forest for quite some time. He's actually been chipping in with some goals, and then throw in the fact that you then can get, hopefully, Chris Wood on the pitch to convert some of the chances that they're creating. They can only be a good thing. They're not in, but to your point before, then they're actually in. A lot of the teams actually are in okay form,
right,
in the bottom sort of 5 or 6. I was actually at the reverse fixture of this, Aston Villa against Forest, and if it goes anything like that game, Forest kind of just sitting in and a bit like we were saying with Liverpool PSG, kind of knowing that they aren't quite as good to offer a threat in attack and just making sure that they stay in a low block. They were sort of inviting Villa to just break them down.
They were sort of crazily defensive that game, weren't they? Like, it was extreme, even by kind of Dyche away standards.
Yeah, I think it was set records for Forest since they'd returned to the Premier League or something like that, of just how little they had the ball in the attacking third. And typically, it's been a theme of this season that when teams come up against a low block, sometimes they can struggle. But Villa were just very patient with it, kept knocking it around, kept sustaining attacks, and just broke Forest down quite straightforwardly. So if it's anything like that, then it will be a comfortable victory for Villa. But we're at a completely different point of the season.
Forest will go for it, surely. Yeah, I mean, they have this weird record as well where they've missed so many chances in their home games. I mean, the Wolves one that they drew 0-0, again, I think broke records for amount of shots, without scoring, that kind of thing. So maybe some of those will start going in.
They haven't won at the City Ground since mid-December, Charlie.
Maybe it's Spurs, I think. Was
The blows just keep on coming.
Which is surprising because they are a team we tend to think of as having a very strong home record, and the City Ground being a tough place to go. But hasn't been played.
To your point about wastefulness in front of goal at home, producer Charlie offers that they have had 228 shots at the City Ground this season. How many goals have they scored from 228 shots?
13, something like that.
13.
Wow.
That's not a good return.
That's a man who's either looked at the running order and memorised it impressively.
Or we'll have to shall we take that out?
My laptop
no mention of running order. 7 games to go. Premier League title race currently sees Arsenal 9 points ahead of Man City, but still feeling a bit nervous because City do have a game in hand and a meet at the Etihad. This weekend as well, Arsenal facing tricky opposition in the shape of Bournemouth, who are on an 11-game unbeaten run, while Man City will be at Stamford Bridge taking on Chelsea, which ordinarily you'd look at that, Arsenal against Bournemouth, Chelsea, Man City, and say that Arsenal had the easier fixture, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I think you can make a case for either of those. I mean, the fact that City are going to Chelsea, you'd think that does make it difficult, but they have a good recent record at Stamford Bridge. And Bournemouth, have been incredibly competitive. They haven't lost in the Premier League since Arsenal beat them in January, but a lot of draws in that time.
The last 5.
The last 5, yeah. And I feel with what's at stake and the way Arsenal have been grinding out wins, they could almost be playing anyone in the Premier League at home this weekend, and your expectations would be the same, which is that it's going to be a really tight, sort of nervy, gritty affair.
Right. How impressed were you with their 1-0 win away to Sporting, who had that incredible winning run at home, or unbeaten run at home?
I thought that was a really good result and sort of an ideal European performance. I guess the context, it coming after 2 defeats means maybe there was more of a demand that they should be playing better football. But I also think that context was important because they just needed to stabilise and, be hard to break down again. That's been their identity this season. That's why they're top of the league, because their floor is a lot higher than City's. City may have a higher ceiling. And I think they did that. I think they did that very well against Sporting. They were solid, didn't give much away, and then took their chance. I guess the fear is that they need to play slightly differently against Bournemouth, because that was also that Sporting game, 0-0 would have been fine as a result. Obviously, if it's 0-0 against Bournemouth on Saturday, that's going to prompt, a lot of gnashing of teeth. So they do need to play in a different way, and whether they have that other gear to do that is the question, because they haven't really shown that in quite some time. I would say. They've been good at grinding out results, very good at grinding out results.
I'd say like now Amorim's gone, Bournemouth feel like the team in the Premier League most capable of producing chaos as well, which Arsenal won't like.
Well, United's the only team to beat them at the Emirates, although that wasn't under Amorim. But yes, they don't like that sort of, chaosy opponent.
I think, I'm amazed that Bournemouth have this unbeaten run because it's completely passing by. It must have been quite boring. But I still associate them with this kind of ability to bring chaos.
They did the double over Arsenal last season.
Fingers crossed.
the only team to do that. I think it will be difficult. I mean, a lot comes down to as well whether Saka and Timber, who Arteta said might be in contention for this game, can come back. I think that would make quite a big difference. But it's a really big game. I mean, like a lot of Arsenal games this season, I felt like if they win, they win the league. And if they don't, then kind of all hell's going to break loose. Like it's felt that binary for some time. And this is another game I'd put in that category because it's a weird lead they have. Because like you say, James, City have the game in hand. They also have this game at the Etihad coming up, which I think everyone kind of assumes City will win after the Carabao Cup final, even though they hadn't actually beaten Arsenal in 3 years before that. And so there's it's not like that's a guaranteed 3 points for City, but it kind of in people's calculations feels that way. Unless I think Arsenal have a big enough lead, let's say if they were to win and City were to drop points, would they be freed up enough to go and really take it to City and almost win the league there and then? But those things won't necessarily play out, but I think that's kind of the assumption.
Chelsea's chances of taking points off Man City. Enzo Fernandez not available for this game. He's still suspended by the club for his comments in a recent interview where he suggested that Spain was a nice place and Madrid reminded him of Buenos Aires, which doesn't seem that controversial.
Loaded, wasn't it? If it feels like a bit of a... I think fair play to Rosenior for making this step. But
or whoever made that decision.
Yeah, but
and not just doing it for the Port Vale game. Which
yes, yeah. Which I think we all would recognise as token.
Yeah,
but it kind of feels like if Rosenior has the respect of the dressing room and the kind of clout of a top manager, then fine. You have the authority to make that step. If he doesn't, then it's quite a big risk. Sidelining arguably your best player for such a big game.
Player who scored the equaliser when the two teams drew last time out.
Yeah, it is. It's a really big call, and if that backfires, that maybe doesn't look great for him. I mean, the only time they haven't lost, the last 4 or 5 of this fixture at Stamford Bridge was that 4-4, that kind of madcap 4-4 under Pochettino.
Yeah. City have won 4 of their last 5 visits. Right. That was the exception. Yeah. Rosenior's side equally have won just 1 of their last 6 league matches against any opposition.
They were beaten 3-0 by Everton last time out.
Yeah.
Which seems like ages ago, but was a really bad result.
They've lost their last 2 without scoring as well. I mean, the numbers are not good.
They're not, and they are a very emotional team, for better or worse, Chelsea. Like, they can... I think their path to victory here is they stay on the right side of the line. They're aggressive. They really sort of get at City, don't give them time on the ball to just dominate them and kind of choke the game a bit like they did in the Carabao Cup final. But there is a risk, as we've seen in other games this season, that they go for it too much. And if they lose a man, that's it.
Yeah.
Then I can't see them getting a result. So I think, but they can, and Stamford Bridge can be quite an intimidating place if the crowd are really into it. They need this result though in that top 5 push. They really do.
It's knowing their roles as well. They really like to go man for man, and it was the Newcastle game recently, wasn't it, where they went man for man against Newcastle and got pulled apart so obviously, and Livramento dropped in, and then there was just a massive gap between the 2 centre backs. That it was Reece James who was the one who was closest to. It was Gordon who scored the eventual goal, but because the way that City are with their rotations, I mean, the game against Liverpool recently, Liverpool weren't very good, but their rotations and the way that they just pop up in different places, Shirky can be, with a drop of a shoulder, can just unlock something, and Nico O'Reilly's been excellent with some of his off-ball running. Chelsea would really need to just track all of that kind of chaos, a bit like we spoke about PSG, at the same time for the whole game. And if they don't do that, because of the way they do like to go man for man for a lot of their sort of time out of possession, if they don't do that, then you can easily get unlocked by Man City.
Do you think Pep could be having a lot of fun this weekend with Rosenior?
Potentially. I think this is the thing, when you play against teams, or Pep Guardiola rather plays against teams who go toe-to-toe with them a little bit more and think we could actually have a go here and maybe try and lock them down man for man, etc., as I say, then you can really start to pull them apart. And that kind of is what happened with the Liverpool game in the FA Cup. Whereas I think some teams can find it quite frustrating when they sit in at times. And think about the Manchester City game against West Ham. It was their only shot on target, but they ended up drawing against them. Nottingham Forest recently, they were 2-0 up, and Forest
away.
Yeah, they get a bit more frustrated when the teams sit in. But if Chelsea at home think, okay, let's go blow for blow, toe for toe, whatever you want to say it, then I was trying to think of another rhyme there, but then they might come unstuck.
Head to head. No.
Well, it doesn't rhyme, but it's still the valid point. Yeah.
A rare midweek off for City as well, so plenty of time for Pep to come up with some diabolical scheme. You mentioned that Reece James as well. I mean, I think Rosenior was saying last weekend that, I mean, he didn't want to say, but maybe he could be in contention. Maybe Chalobah could be in contention. I think that would make a huge difference as well for them.
Chelsea Man City will be 4:30 on Sunday. The other top 5 contenders this weekend, well, Man United are in 3rd place right now. They host Leeds. Villa a point behind them at Forest, and Liverpool, Fulham. Anything you want to say about this game? The reverse fixture, do you remember the extraordinary goal?
Yeah.
Which saw Fulham equalise in this game. 2-2, I think it finished.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Harrison Reed.
It's one of the goals of the season and over a longer period. Absolute perfection.
Liverpool have had a habit this season as well of conceding goals from players who's scored their first goal of the season, essentially. I think Harrison Reed was asked after the game, like, have you ever scored a goal like that? Even in training, he was like, no.
Right.
So I think that, I don't know, maybe it's just an unfortunate pattern. But yeah, they've been on the wrong side of it quite a few times, Liverpool. I mean, Harry Wilson's obviously the main sort of talking point from a Fulham perspective. Obviously, he's got a history with Liverpool as well. And because he's out of contract in the summer, I don't know where he's going to go. I've got no information on it. But the way that football, or the Premier League is going more specifically, I think Liverpool could see whether they want Harry Wilson to come back to Liverpool, because you think of his set piece delivery, which Liverpool have been lacking quite a lot this season. Even though Dominic Szoboszlai is a good striker of the ball, you watch their set pieces and they've been really quite poor in their delivery as much as anything. He's got a very good delivery on him from set pieces and can score from long range. Liverpool's issue has been coming up against low blocks and trying to unlock it. If you can't try and break them down, then you might need a shot from distance at times, and Harry Wilson's got that as well. So I don't know whether it's worth saying, do you want to come back home, Harry?
I mean, Slots hasn't beaten Fulham, has it? I think in the three previous games against them, which is maybe just a quirk, but maybe Marco Silva as well has knows how to play this team.
Perhaps so. What time is that game? Saturday tea time, if you want to watch Liverpool-Fulham. The other three matches this weekend, to be watched in double speed or not, Burnley-Brighton. Seagulls, this may surprise you as well, Dan. They've won 4 of their last 5. That's crept up on you, hasn't it?
Yeah, I was slightly more aware of their climb than the Bournemouth's.
I know what you mean about Bournemouth. I think I struggle to name a single one of those 11 unbeaten Bournemouth games.
Fair play to them.
They beat Liverpool in that run at Bournemouth.
I'm trying to think how far back it would
I think
go. They did beat Liverpool, but
that must be since then. Yeah. It must have started early January. Oh, they beat Spurs. Sorry, that Semenyo one would have been in that round. I do remember that. Sorry.
There's all you can't pay attention to all 20 teams. Yeah. There's always a couple that slip under the radar. And it actually was Brighton before they went on this.
There you go.
I would say they were a bit of a nothing team for a while, but now I'm afraid Bournemouth are occupying that position in my mind.
Burnley.
Saturday.
That's Saturday, 2:00 is Burnley-Brighton. Same time for Brentford-Everton, which is a duel for 7th spot at least, which is now certain to offer you European football next season. Brentford are currently 7th. Everton are placed behind them. The Bees, a couple of months ago, were 4-2 winners away to Everton. So, yeah. Everton have got the derby with Liverpool next weekend too. I mean, games coming thick and fast at this time of the year. And 2:00 on Sunday for Palace against Newcastle. Palace also involved in action this evening in the Conference League. They're away to Fiorentina. Oh, here's a stat just to finish off. If the season started at the turn of the year, who would be top?
Arsenal.
Who'd be second?
United.
Who would be third?
I think I know this.
Go on, Mark.
Everton.
It is Everton. Remarkable.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
I think this one's interesting as well because Brentford against Everton. Have you seen the recent news with Matthew Benham, Brentford owner, waxing lyrical about Beto? A lot of criticism for Beto in that he gets in good goal-scoring positions, he gets in behind, he gets into one-on-one positions, and people sort of criticising him for the fact that he doesn't then convert those. And I can read out the quote exactly as he said it, but he was at a conference, Matthew Benham, and he said that when we played Everton at our place last year, Beto missed 3 one-on-ones, and again, a lot of people would criticise that. But from a data perspective, he did say that, but with his data hat on, obviously he's got a data background, so I respect a lot of what he says. Any decent data model worth its salt would give Beto an upgrade based on that performance of getting to one-on-ones.
Because he gets into those positions?
Because it's the process, not always the outcome. He said, typically for a one-on-one, the odds are 50-50 that you'll score. So you might say that he's less efficient, but the fact that he's getting into those positions for the shot is more important. Beto's last game in the Premier League scored twice against Chelsea. I can't remember whether they actually were
Timo Werner argument. I'm not having it.
But it's about the process, not always the outcome, and he is always getting into lucrative areas. He's just not always converting them. So if he scores against Brentford, maybe he'll look up into the stands and do that sort of point to the opposition's owner. I don't know.
Counting his fingers or something.
Magnificent. Very good. That's all happening this weekend around about 7:15, 7:30 there or thereabouts. We will start recording our weekend roundup on the Totally Football Show, and you're very welcome to join us live on YouTube. Always appreciate your comments there as well. That'll be available as a podcast on Monday morning. For now, many, many thanks to Mark, to Dan, to Charlie, to Jake, and producer Charlie in the booth, and to you, listener. Have yourself a great weekend. Hopefully see you on Sunday evening, and for now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.